Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And we are on our journey to make a faction focus for all 27 factions. And we're about to talk about World Eaters, which you might get from the video that John's a tad fan of by the giant bolter prop, or maybe the big stompy corn knight in the background, or maybe the Angron 3D print in the background.
Yeah, I love the World Eaters. I've loved them for a very long time. They're fantastic.
I would normally dunk on you, but really they're just blood angels, but with spikes. So I can't dunk on you too hard.
Yeah, they are also extremely tragic.
We love tragic things. What can we say?
Do. So
don't look into that. Don't read into it. It's not good for anyone. But for us, I mean, flavor, because we are like deeply narrative sort of players at our hearts, flavor matters a whole lot when we're looking for a faction. And considering these videos are short form and made to sort of be an elevator pitch for a faction, we have to start with the lore. So John, what is a World Eater? Okay,
so World Eaters, like we were saying earlier, are tragic, right? They started off as these honorable gladiatorial style warriors that, though ruthless, though a little cruel sometimes in fighting, they still had their minds about them. They were still strategic. They didn't just mindlessly slaughter everything. But over the course of the Horus Heresy, their father got betrayed. Their father fell to Khorne in its entirety. They were abused by their Primarch father themselves, and also fell to a thing called the Butcher's Nails that was implanted in their father at a young age, that stokes them and their father to constant violence and cause them immeasurable pain if they are not causing violence.
And these nails cannot be removed.
No amount of space magic or anything else has ever been able to get rid of them without killing the host. And
which is the problem.
Yeah, so it has turned these things into absolute monsters. And as the Horus Heresy continued on, all the way to the Siege of Terra, they ended up just completely becoming mindless, gibbering, mad berserkers. Just completely insane and lost in their own violence. And some of them continued fighting for another 10,000 years.
Literally up to the current day and setting. Some of them have been fighting nonstop.
Yes, and so that is just a constant strew of blood. And recently in the lore, their father, Angron, has come back. And he has done all sorts of crazy things in lore already, such as creating a murder curse, which is, what a sentence. Like,
he went and got his Marlboro Reds and came home, and we wished he didn't.
Yeah, like he absolutely just rages.
He could have stayed out getting milk. It would have been fine. It would have been better for everyone involved.
Yeah, and he has the ability to come back, both in the game and in this setting. He cannot be gone for long. He can't be banished like the other demon primarchs for hundreds of years. He comes back pretty quickly. I think it's like 7 days and 7 hours.
And then, ba-boom, he's back.
Yeah, or sorry, 8 days, 8 hours. Oh, it's nuts. He does crazy things, right? And what makes them interesting on the battlefield is that they're unpredictable. Just top down, you don't know whether they're going to just run at you mad or if they're actually going to flank you and use tactics for once, because they don't know whether they're going to be cognizant or not.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just crazy.
Yeah, are they, sort of doped up gorillas charging at you? Or, are they sort of in their noble mind for just a brief lucid moment before being subsumed by the urge to kill?
Yeah, did they get a breath of air before being plunged back into an ocean of hatred?
Yeah, and I think the tragedy is part of the fluff. But I think, on top of the tragedy is just, the horrible mutations this has done to their body as well as their minds.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, they all look like Gears of War characters. They are roided out to the nines. They're huge, every one of them. Absolutely yoked because Khorne forces it on them. At the cost of their own souls. And agency. But for you, if you're looking to play these ravening, drooling madmen on the battlefield, it does come to your advantage. Their faction rule is about getting these benefits for you on the tabletop through the blessings of Khorne. We're going to put it on the screen, and there's a lot of words here. There's a lot. Don't be intimidated. It is not as complicated as it initially looks. So when you start a battle round, you get to take dice. And the dice numbers can vary, but you get a bundle of dice and you roll them. And when you look at your dice, you're going to, according to that chart over there, you're going to start picking out pairs. Some of them are any double. Some of them are doubles of a certain number or up. The bigger the bonus, the higher the number that you have to have doubles of. And you get to pick blessings that cover your whole army. Whole army with these bonuses.
So it's basically a slot machine. We're going to Vegas.
It is. You're absolutely, you're spinning the wheel, you're seeing what you get. And you really, really hope that you're going to hit the jackpot. But for some players, they've heard that and they're like, yeah, I don't want chance in my dice game. That's cool. But for people out there who really, really like to have a good time, my fellow Timmies, that's a game design turn some people get. This is a mechanic for you, where you don't mind a little bit of chance.
And I think that unlike a lot of the other factions where they really heavily depend on their army rule, it's kind of a bonus for World Eaters. Like, they don't demand it like some of the other factions. It's strictly a bonus for them. You might just go off the rails for a turn, but it makes you unpredictable for your opponent.
It does. And you as a player have to sort of play into them. But the benefit here is you don't just activate one blessing. You can pop up to 2 of them once per battle round. So, even if you get, let's say you don't get the big jackpot, but you get 2 middle ones, that's still quite good. And it depending on what you choose to pick, can really amp up your synergies. Even something like Martial Excellence, which is in the middle, gives you sustained hits 1 on everything. And a melee faction that really wants a bucket of dice
that stacks attacks on attacks, yeah, for sure.
That is great, and that's at the middle of the table. When you get all the way up to Unbridled Bloodlust, where you're running and charging with a whole army of melee monsters, good God Almighty.
That's insane.
That's so good. It's so good. And that's not even it. But wait. There's more. Their relentless rage is truly unending.
Yeah, so their relentless rage, it just gives them the ability when they charge to get an additional attack and additional strength. It's much like when we talked about Blood Angels, right? That sounds really boring, but you're talking about a faction whose last rule was very unpredictable, and this one goes off every time you make a charge in a melee faction. Like, that means everything is going to get just enough strength to be changing whether you wound on 3s or wound on 4s. And it's going to give you just enough more attacks to get through. Maybe you just needed 1 more attack to kill that character. 1 more attack to tank down that tank. This gives it to you, right? And when you have a unit of dudes with 6 or 7 attacks, or even 5, having them go to 6 per is pretty good, right?
If it's 5 guys, that's 5 more attacks.
Right.
Now let's assume you have sustained hits. One of those is probably going to be 6. You're going to get an extra hit. Maybe you get a couple extra hits out of it. Now you just got 8 extra attacks off of this rule.
Yeah, you're kind of stacking the deck in your favor, so when you pull the slot machine, you're more likely to get a payout.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's simple, but it's highly, highly effective, I promise you.
Yeah.
And especially makes sense for their game plan that they're trying to accomplish. And shockingly, they have a lot of data sheets here that we could work with. But really, we're not going to go through all of them. John's a World Eaters player, so he doesn't know how to read. So it would be really futile in general. But we're going to do our best to sound out some symbols for him so that we can each pick one that we feel is representative. Go ahead. Sound it out.
Carin the Betrayer.
It's like popcorn to John. He's having 4th grade flashbacks.
Yeah.
John,
So,
who is Carin?
so Carin is my boy, right? Like, I love Carin.
John, you have a child. You
Even
can't read and you have a child. You're really breaking Kentucky stereotypes for us here, bud.
Yeah. So, Carin is not the leader of the World Eaters. He's something called the Equerry, or was. He is now batshit insane.
Yeah.
And where Angron is the Primarch, and he's the dad, and he has a model, and he's a monster truck. Like, he just destroys everything he touches. And he can come back if you win a jackpot. He's really good. Carin is the son that it was the only son he would listen to until he too went mad. In the
Yeah.
war. And so once he was lost, he lost everything and he went crazy. And he's called Carin the Betrayer because on a battle called Scalathrax, a bunch of World Eaters were cowering and not charging like the hill. And a bunch of Emperor's children was with them and not charging the hill. And so he went from foxhole to foxhole with a flamethrower and went, "We're running up the hill and killing them, or I'm going to kill you." And they went, "No, you won't." So he burned them alive and then moved on. And then sure enough, everyone went with him. And that's why they call him Carin the Betrayer. He is a complete and total tragic story. And if you want to know more about the character, I highly suggest you look into it. But he is a beautiful, beautiful story in this setting. But his data sheet holds up too, right? Normal movement, normal toughness, doesn't bring a whole lot there. But what he does bring is sheer unmitigated melee potential.
God, just a bucket of dice. An absolute bucket. You need to roll his attack pool with metric foot of d6.
Like,
Keep
he
on
has
going.
8 attacks. Like, this is just base. Before you add any other rules, right?
And
8
there
attacks.
will be bonuses.
8 attacks hitting on 2s that he gets to re-roll the hits for and re-roll the wounds for of 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Strength 6, B7 on the charge, minus 2 AP, 3 damage. He kills Gravis Marines in a single shot. Just gone.
Yeah.
Terminator, dead. Gone. But he also has a very fluffy rule in that at the end of the charge phase, if this model is leading a unit and that unit is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, he loses his mind. If you fail a leadership test, one of the models in his bodyguard unit, the unit he's in, just gets taken. They're just dead.
He kills them. He kills them for cowardice.
It just kills them. Done. Right? That's super fun.
Brutal.
But my favorite rule on his sheet, what I think is his best one, is Berserker Frenzy, which is when he would be destroyed by a melee attack if he has not fought yet in the phase. And there's all sorts of fights first all over the place. If you do not remove him from play, he can then instead fight before being removed from the table. Which means fights first isn't a defense against him anymore. He can just walk up to the lion and being like, "I'm killing you." And the lion goes, "I fight first," and stabs him in the neck. And then Carin just goes, "That's not good enough," and beats him to death.
I'm gonna kill you before I die. Yeah. Yeah, it's so Carin. I love it.
It's
I
so
do.
good.
And, I mean, again, like, that attack profile is before buffs. Now acknowledge that on the charge, it's +1 attack and +1 strength. And he, in the middle of the possible options, is sustained hits. And let's assume you rolled high. Oh, God. it's a problem. And the thing is, though, he has to go in some sort of unit. Otherwise, who's he going to kill? Like, when he wants to, like, team kill his own people. So for me, I got to pick Khorne Berserkers.
Yeah,
John,
they're a
I
core
just
unit.
got it.
You have to bring Khorne Berserkers and World Eaters.
They are the Khorne core unit. It's like their version of an intercessor if you've watched our Space Marine videos. They are the heart of a World Eaters list, and, you know, they're indicative of the whole faction. So if you look at them, similar to Carin, in terms of defensiveness, they have the basic Marine stat line. Nothing that you're going to really write home about, but also not a letdown. The thing that they do really well, much like Carin, is they absolutely tear people up in melee. Every single one of them has scary chain blades on their basic dudes. And one of them can even take a big eviscerator, which is like a huge sort of axey thing. And again, they're getting 4 attacks apiece. That's before bonuses. They're on strength 5. That's before bonuses, -1 damage. And you start stacking rolls on top of this from Carin in the unit, or from the Corn chart, or from the charge, and they, as your basic troops, start hitting way harder than you would expect. And they also have a little bit of a trick on their sheet that I like a lot compared to sort of the one-dimensional nature they used to have. Now they can do something called Blood Surge, where if an enemy shoots them and they're still alive, and they lost a troop, or at least one model, to that shooting attack, they get so angry and indignant at the gall of this ranged soldier that they get to roll a d6 and then move that many inches straight towards the shooting unit, and it can even put them in melee with it. So, in an army that really wants to focus on getting in and getting close as quickly as possible without getting shot to death, they get to turn being shot into more movement. That's... Mwah.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's so fluffy. It's so fun. I'm just a huge fan.
And as a core troop, too. Like, that means this isn't like a special unit. You can bring 6 units of these if you wanted to.
Yeah. And they also have like a little tricky ability, Icon of Corn, if you choose to take it, where when you make a blessing roll, if this unit has an icon and it's on an objective somewhere, you can re-roll one of the dice. And that's what I meant by, like, the number of dice you roll can be a little variable because there are some tricks to play with the pool, and this is one of them. To really, like, take that highly randomized chart and equalize it a little bit to help you to get the sustained buffs that you might really be trying to fish for. And I don't know, I'm a fan of that mechanic because there's some ways to interact with it that are pretty neat. But I think before we go, we want to give people some tips about how to practically get to grips with this army if you feel compelled by these tragic gladiators turned into madmen. Something that you can use immediately on the tabletop as you're trying to learn them or pick them up. John, what would you say is your number 1 tip for World Eaters?
Number one tip for World Eaters is multiple squads. Mm-hmm. Right? Even if that means taking less dudes in each squad, you want to have multiple single units, and transports are your friends.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to bring too big of units, especially with the blast keyword. They're just going to shoot you off the table, and they're hard to position. It's even harder to get all of them into combat. And so, really, you kind of want to bring like 5-man squads for the most part, and just let them be murder machines.
And if they die, so be it. Corn cares not where the blood flows.
Yeah. Maybe bring a big 10-man blob to like throw Carin into. Maybe bring some bigger ones of jackals so that you can like screen out a little bit. But for the most part, just bring small squads and bring a lot of them. And shove them in transports if you can.
That bleeds into my tip as well, which for me is that this is an army about pressure. Heavily about pressure.
Oh, for sure. It's threat saturation all the way down.
Yeah, you cannot like take a couple of key power balls and then like attrition your way up the battlefield. It just won't work for you. They're going to shoot you to bits, or magic you to bits, or any number of things that could get around some of your stuff. You really have to just have a lot of minimum units to apply pressure at all places and at all times, and hopefully something's going to break through, or they're going to make a mistake underneath all of the heat. Mm-hmm. And if you could find an opening, that's where you could push through, get into the good stuff, and now you're winning. But you got to keep the pressure up. If you don't, you could struggle.
Absolutely.
And as much as like they're a chaos faction and they're a faction that John loves and as my good buddy, that means I got to give them just a little bit of light ribbing. They're tragic and sad and pretty cool, I got to admit. Especially from the novels. And if you're into this faction, I hope this is helpful for you, and you should really go listen to some Horus Heresy stuff.
It's very good for this stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Betrayer by M. Dempsey Bowden. Highly suggest go listen.
A wonderful book. And if this faction is something that you're really into, but you think we didn't cover enough because it's a short form video, maybe less short than we wanted, you know, the socials are below. Feel free to reach out. We are happy to help people individually if they have a specific question or need a little bit of help getting off the starting line. We are here for that, please. It's fine. We encourage it. And if World Eaters isn't for you, but you're still looking for a faction or you're just interested, please check out the rest of the channel. We are putting up one for every single faction. By God.
So many factions.
And hopefully one of them fits your flavor. And for now, it's been all of our opinions. Bonafide, Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all on the next one.